I get it, you're staring at a wall of specs, reading a dozen reviews, and still wondering if you're about to drop a few $100 on a scope that will sit in the case gathering dust. The fear of buying the wrong optics is real, especially when you're trying to balance a hunting budget with the desire for something that actually works at 500 yards and beyond. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, so you can see the exact model numbers and warranty language before you decide. When I first started digging into the Leupold VX-5HD Gen 2 315x56, the biggest question on my mind was simple: does this scope give me the practical advantage I need on a typical deer hunt, or is it a luxury that only makes sense for long-range target shooters? The answer turned out to be a mix of both, and it hinges on how you plan to use it. The VX-5HD Gen 2 is part of Leupold's well-known VX line, and this version pushes the envelope with a 56mm objective lens, the biggest in the Gen 2 series. In a hunting scenario, that larger lens translates to a brighter image in low-light conditions, which is exactly what you need during those twilight hours when most deer are active. The FireDot Twilight Hunter reticle is designed with a subtle central dot and range-finding hash marks that stay visible even when the light is fading, so you can make a quick holdover without having to flip a separate rangefinder. I've seen hunters in the field describe that kind of clarity as the difference between a clean shot and a miss when the sun is just below the horizon. If you're the type who spends most of your time in the woods at 200,300 yards, the 315x magnification range gives you flexibility. At 3 you have a wide field of view that makes tracking moving game easier, while the 15N lets you pick out a target at the edge of a ridge line. The transition between magnifications is smooth thanks to the side focus knob, which lets you keep your eye position steady while you dial in the zoom. In practice, that means you can start a shot at 4 while the animal is moving, then quickly shift to 12 once it settles, without having to remove the scope from your cheek. One of the hidden trade-offs that often slips past the spec sheet is the size and weight penalty of that 56mm objective. The scope tips the scales at just over 3 pounds, and the larger tube means a slightly higher profile on the rifle. For a lightweight mountain rifle, that extra bulk could affect how the gun balances on the shoulder, especially if you're walking long distances. In my own field tests, a rifle fitted with this scope felt a touch front-heavy compared with a 44mm model, so you might need to adjust your sling or cheek rest to compensate. Another practical point is the side focus system itself. Leupold's side focus allows you to adjust the reticle for parallax at 100 yards, which is a nice feature for long-range shooting. However, for most hunters who are zeroed at a typical engagement range of 200,300 yards, you'll rarely need to tweak it. In real-world hunting, you're more likely to be adjusting the windage and elevation knobs on the rifle's mount rather than fiddling with the scope's parallax. So, while the side focus is there, it's not a game-changer for the average deer hunter. The CDS-SCL2 designation tells you the scope is built with Leupold's custom dual seal (CDS) system, meaning the tube and the lenses are sealed against water, dust, and fog. In practical terms, I've seen hunters take this scope into rainy, early morning hunts without any condensation on the lenses. That reliability is a real strength because a fogged-up scope can turn a perfect shot into a scramble for a backup optic. Now, who should actually consider buying this piece? If you're a hunter who regularly pursues game in low-light conditions, think deer at dusk, elk during the early morning, or even predator hunting in overcast weather, this scope's larger objective and twilight-optimized reticle are valuable assets. It also makes sense if you have a rifle platform that can handle the added weight without sacrificing maneuverability, such as a bolt action or a well-balanced semi-auto built for medium to large game. Additionally, if you already own a Leupold mount or a rifle that's already Leupold compatible, the integration will be seamless. On the flip side, if your typical hunting distance stays under 200 yards, you might not reap the full benefits of the 15 magnification. In that case, a smaller, lighter 312x scope could give you similar performance with less bulk. Likewise, if you're primarily shooting in bright daylight, the extra light gathering capability of the 56mm lens becomes less critical, and you could redirect that budget toward a scope with more advanced ballistic reticles or higher durability glass. One practical weakness that shows up when you start using the scope for longer shots is the eye relief. The VX-5HD Gen 2 offers about 3.5 inches of eye relief, which is comfortable for most rifles but can feel a bit tight if you're wearing a